this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
I'm sure David Helman, Dallas Cowboys insider, Fox Sports, would like to talk Dylan Cruz and Paul Skeens, but we have to talk about the Cowboys and what they may or may not do to put themselves in position to go to the NFC Championship game for the first time in almost 30 years. And we'll see what happens this Thursday night. 26th pick in the NFL draft, Kansas City. Last year, Blake and I were in Las Vegas. Absolute blast. And we enjoyed it. I thought I knew how popular the NFL was. Then I go to the NFL draft where it's not even a game, and 600,000 people go through Las Vegas on the weekend. And it was absolutely wild. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. Our NFL coverage this week brought to you by the #1 tequila in the world, Patron. Super premium, 100% blue agave tequila. Enjoy some Patron Añejo or Patron Extra Añejo on the rocks with a cigar this week as you take in the NFL draft. We welcome in David Helman, Fox Sports, Cowboys insider. All right, David Helman, 26th pick in the draft, and Mike McCarthy's dropping, getting a Y tight end, which makes me want to puke and makes me think about kind of Mike Ditka in 1999 with the New Orleans Saints. Where are we going with this offensive philosophy from Kellen Moore and what he wanted to do to maybe what Mike McCarthy wants to do with Dak and the personnel?
To be honest with you, I really don't think it's going to be that different. Although I'm curious for your rationale there. Sure, I understand maybe tight end is not the most valuable position to take in the first round, but I mean that's a far cry from trading away your draft for a running back, don't you think?
Absolutely, and what I want is a pass-catching playmaker at tight end, not somebody who is run blocking or pass blocking first and playmaking down the field. I'm great if they take a tight end at 26, but I want a playmaker.
Okay, I mean that makes sense. To answer your question, I really don't think there is a huge difference. I mean, Mike McCarthy had that soundbite at the combine that he wants to run the damn ball, and that got a lot of play and a lot of attention and made a lot of people mad. But I mean, the stats will tell you the Cowboys were an incredibly run-heavy team last year. They leaned on the run a lot. Obviously, they had 2,000-yard backs. Their run-to-pass ratio on early downs was very in favor of the run. So, this is already a team that wants to run the ball. Now, where you might be disappointed, and Mike McCarthy, he didn't just say he wanted a wide tight end. I think what he said was, there's a handful of criteria that would lead you to draft a tight end in the first round. And if you're going to spend the pick, he wants a tight end that can do a little bit of everything. Obviously, you want the guy that can make plays down the field, but he also should be a guy that is versatile enough to move around, whether that's moving around the formation or doing a little bit of H-back work in the backfield. And on top of that, a guy who's not a liability as a blocker. Yes, and that makes it interesting. This is a very deep tight end class. I think there's a number of different ways the Cowboys could go. But when I hear that, it is interesting. Of the two guys that most people really see as first-round picks, there's Dalton Kincaid out of Utah and there's Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. If that's really what they want, it's hard to look at a guy like Dalton Kincaid and think that the Cowboys would draft him in the first round because he really is more of your modern, flexed out, basically wide receiver on steroids, where Michael Mayer is a little bit more of a well-rounded guy. You hear a lot of comparisons to Jason Witten, which I love this time of year because people will say that Jason Witten is a bad thing in the first round because he's not the dynamic Travis Kelce-like tight end. But hey, picking 26th in the draft. If the Cowboys are able to find a tight end that can average 800 to 1,000 yards a year for the next decade, I think they would take that every time.
No, I'm with you. David Helman, Fox Sports, Cowboys Insider on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Our NFL draft coverage brought to you by Patron Tequila. Okay, so let me give you an example, Helman. Steve Palazzolo joins us every week, Pro Football Focus, and he says you shouldn't run like that in the NFL now. Yeah, I called it second and Zeke because I felt like for the last 3 years it was 2nd and 9. I mean that's putting your quarterback and your guys behind the 8 ball. But I felt like every time Zeke got the ball on first down, it was 2nd and 9. So I know PFF isn't perfect. A lot of people like them. A lot of people don't like them. Palazzolo and that team's like, dude, you got to throw the ball in the NFL today. What's your reaction to running it too much early on downs?
Oh yeah, to be clear, and I think there's always a disconnect here. I hate running the ball. I mean, like, obviously, you've got to be able to do it. You need a running game. You've got to be able to run the ball, especially to steal the line from Mike McCarthy. You've got to be able to run the ball when everybody in the stadium knows you need to run the ball. Like, there's definitely value in that. But yeah, I mean, it's 2023. The numbers are undeniable at this point that throwing is the way to win in the modern NFL, and teams that throw it the best are typically the teams that win the most games. The disconnect there is I don't really care so much about what I want. It's just, the Cowboys make the decisions and the people in charge don't care what I think. And so I think the bottom line is for every advancement that they've made, the Cowboys are a team that is, fighting tooth and nail to stay in the 1990s. And I
agree.
They won 3 Super Bowls running the hell out of the ball with a running back who never got tired and never left the game. And that has clearly left a sizable impression on their DNA as an organization. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of ways they could become more efficient on offense, namely putting the ball in the hands of their best player, Dak Prescott. And to some degree, they do that. But yeah, it's hard to feel confident that the Cowboys really see things that way when their head coach is saying he wants to run the hell out of the ball and they're looking at tight ends and running backs in the first round. Not necessarily the way that I would build my team, but again, I think this will be my 12th year following the Cowboys professionally. Man. And, they still haven't asked for my opinion yet, which I really would love it if they did, but no dice so far.
What is wrong with them? David Helman, Fox Sports, LSU grad, Cowboys Insider on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Okay, how did you see, Dak had a lot of turnovers last year. And he at times he can still make any play on the field. And he also had some really good games. But the turnovers, and when you're the Dallas Cowboys QB playing in all the TV slots that they play in, because so many people hate the Cowboys, it's magnified. But why did that happen? Why did he have so many turnovers? Was it Dak, combination of Dak, Kellen, personnel? What'd you see?
I mean, I get labeled as being a Dak apologist, and to some degree, maybe I am. I don't shy away from the fact that I root for the guy, but I think it's a combination. I mean, Dak's an aggressive quarterback, maybe even aggressive to the point of delusion, which I think most good quarterbacks are that confident in their abilities. So you have a combination of a very aggressive quarterback who is unwilling to let a play go. And then I think the Cowboys personnel took a step back last year. They traded away Amari Cooper. They did a terrible job of replacing him. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb stepped up into the wide receiver 1 role, but they had nothing filling the wide receiver 2 and 3 roles. So you combine a very aggressive, very confident quarterback with lacking personnel, and I think it leads to a lot of miscues. Certainly, Dak made his fair share of mistakes. I think if you go back, I think it was Mike Martz charted it a couple weeks ago for the 33rd team or one of those websites. If you go back and chart it, you can probably pin 8 of his picks purely on Dak, which that stuff's going to happen. But then I think he threw 15. So you're talking about more than half, or about half being squarely on tipped balls, tight window throws, receivers not creating separation. And again, that's not to completely let him off the hook, but you can go back and watch, the number of times Dak was throwing into very tight windows because he doesn't have a guy that creates separation. That's why I don't think it's a coincidence that they traded for Brandon Cooks, who's a separator, who's a guy that can create yards between him and his coverage. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're looking at tight ends and receivers that are great route runners, whether it's Michael Mayer, whether it's Zay Flowers, the Boston College kid. I think they're looking to fix that, which begs the question why they didn't think they needed to fix it last year, but I guess that's water under the bridge at this point. So, like I said, and you're right, the Cowboys are such a polarizing team. If you seek to explain why Dak might have thrown so many picks, you get labeled a homer.
Right.
I certainly don't think Dak is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now, but I mean, the Cowboys had the best offense in the league last year, despite a turnover problem and despite lacking personnel. I mean, they put up points and yards at a huge clip, and a huge amount of that was to Dak Prescott. You can see it in the splits. I mean, they were bottom half of the league in the 5 games that Cooper Rush was their quarterback, and they were top 3 the rest of the way when Dak came back from his hand injury. So I think he's going to be fine. I do think they need to upgrade the talent in the in the pass catching game, but it looks like they're well on their way to doing that. I mean, like I said, they got Cooks, and I do think they're going to draft somebody highly, whether it's a receiver, tight end, or running back. They're going to add talent to the offense, and I have a feeling his numbers will be just fine. I mean, even after leading the league in picks, Dak Prescott has the same career interception percentage as Patrick Mahomes, but people lose sight of that because, like you said, I mean, when you're on national TV every week throwing a pick or two, it kind of warps people's perceptions of who you are, but I just don't think he's that quarterback.
He is David Helman, on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, Fox Sports, and Dallas Cowboys insider. Okay, I hope they go wide receiver or tight end or wide receiver early instead of Bijan Robinson or even, I don't know, Gibbs out of Alabama. If you had to call it with the 26th pick Thursday night, what direction does Stephen Jones go?
It's a wonderful question. I mean, and I actually, having said everything I just said, I think people lose the plot on Bijan because, again, I mean, you're talking pick 26, not pick 4, where Zeke was, and You're talking about a guy that can add a lot of value in the passing game. I mean, Bijan Robinson is a wonderful receiving running back. If he was there, I really wouldn't hate the pick that much, but I really think it's a lot of bluster about nothing. I'll be shocked if Bijan Robinson falls that far. So that leaves me. I'm not convinced the value is going to be there at receiver. Maybe if Zay Flowers were to fall, but I think tight end makes a lot of sense just because of how the board stacks up. But the other thing, as much as we talk about them needing help at the skill positions, I think the value also lines up on the lines. I wouldn't be surprised to see a pass rusher be the pick here. I think they really like Will McDonald, the edge rusher out of Iowa State. And I think he's got a very good shot to be there. And then another name that you hear a lot if they get wiped out of pass catchers is Steve Avila, the guard out of TCU, who maybe that's a little bit of a reach at 26 overall, but people said the same thing about Tyler Smith last year, and nobody's complaining about that pick anymore. So If you get a plug-and-play guard at 26, a guy who can step right in and be a plus starter from day one, I don't think anybody would complain about that. So I do think they would prefer to add a weapon, but if those options get wiped out, I could definitely see somebody getting added to one of the lines.
How would you describe Stephen and Jerry Jones? Is there a sense of urgency? I'm talking about edge of their, the other GMs in the league have to get their whatever, 4, 5, 6 a.m., David, because they work for the owner. They hold the dual role of owners and GMs. How would you describe their approach, knowing that like Howie Roseman is working 21 hours a day, or John Lynch or other guys around the league? How would you describe their approach and the hours in compared to some of the other front offices that their job is on the line, whereas Stephen and Jerry's is not?
Well, fortunately, I mean, just in regard to the draft itself, fortunately for Cowboy fans, I think there's more work that goes into the draft process than just Stephen and Jerry Jones. I mean, the under the radar name there is Will McClay, who's the vice president of player personnel. He runs the draft and defers the final decision to the Jones family. But Will and his staff run all of this. They put in every bit of the work of any other front office in the league. And like I said, look, I don't seek out to defend the Cowboys too much, but their draft track record speaks for itself. I mean, if there is one thing that they are very good at, it's acquiring talent in the draft. So I don't worry about that so much. As to the other part, I'm with you, man. I mean, yeah, I think Stephen and Jerry Jones want to win very badly, but is it the all-consuming need that every other team has because their job's on the line? No. It goes back to last year. I mean, only a team that is managed by the owner could trade away Amari Cooper and really do nothing about replacing him, and head into a season and say that's
incredible.
Okay. Now, I do think the urgency fluctuates because, again, last year the urgency felt like it was at an all-time low, and they were basically like, we're content with what we have right here, and we'll see what happens. This year, it picks up a little bit. I mean, they're getting a lot of praise, and rightfully so, for trading for Brandon Cooks and trading for Stephon Gilmore and really seeking to add quality players at positions of need. So, I mean, you can't say they absolutely don't care because they respond to the setbacks of last year with urgent and smart moves to improve the roster. But I think you look at the track record over a long enough period of time. Yes, the Cowboys want to win, but I do think there's just a difference when you know that your job's not on the line every other
Absolutely.
year like it is in most other front offices.
Why do you think that Jerry and Stephen don't make it a free agency destination, considering you've been there for, like you said, a dozen years, all the glitz and glamour, all the big names that have been through? Dak makes a fortune off the field. Even other lesser-known positions have that capability. Dallas, Texas, no state income tax, Dallas metro area, plenty to do for a 25, 28, 30-year-old. Why do you think, because I would think this is what Stephen and Jerry would want to do, why are they not, you're right on the Brandon Cooks thing, but why are they not more active in the free agency game, considering they could be one of the top 5 destinations in the league?
Two thoughts come to mind. One, they've been there, done that, and it's mostly gone horribly. Like, let's not pretend like the Cowboys haven't tried to be those big spenders over the years, and most of those decisions didn't wind up working out. I mean, Leroy Glover comes to mind as an outside free agent acquisition that really worked out, but for the most part, they haven't had a lot of hits. And then on top of that, I think, and this is baked into that, but the Cowboys don't want to spend money on production that didn't help them. To say, oh, hey, you did this, that, and the other for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we're going to pay you twice what you're worth when you haven't done anything for us. No, I think, billionaires like staying billionaires, and I think if they're going to hand out those types of contracts, they want it to be for a guy that has benefited their organization, whether it's Ezekiel Elliott, whether it's Dak Prescott, or any of these young guys that's about to get a deal between CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, whatever. I think they place a premium on, if they're going to invest, they want to invest on people that have helped their organization and not take a risk on an unknown. To be honest with you, I think that's fine. I just think they need to do a better job of striking the balance. Like, by and large, we find time and time again, the teams that really, really spend, big stacks in free agency, for the most part, they're talent-poor teams, and most of those decisions don't work out. Like I've said, I mean, you can go back and look at the results since about 2010. The Cowboys know how to draft. They're pretty good at it. So it's not as if they have no talent and they need to be spending $250 million on free agents every year. They just need to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's why, it was honestly kind of shocking when they did it this year. They actively used resources to acquire guys like Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, not only sending draft picks to other teams to get those guys, but then they turn around, they're paying Brandon Cooks $12 million, and they're paying Stephon Gilmore $10 million. So they're spending on salary in addition to acquiring the guys. If they could find a way to do these types of things every single year, I think they would be in a much better spot. Because, again, you don't want to be the team that's stuck paying $100 million for a second-tier wide receiver. But if you can add a former defensive player of the year to your roster for a fifth-round pick and a $9 million salary, why wouldn't you be doing that?
Right.
And I think that's what makes it so frustrating when they, you have a year or 2 years or 3 years where they won't make these type of moves. And then they finally get the memo and do it. It makes it frustrating that there's no consistency there. I hear you on that. And hopefully these sorts of moves pay off to a degree that we see it become a little bit more of a trend. Amen.
All right, David Helman, if LSU makes the College World Series, will you be there in June in Omaha?
It's hard to predict that far out with my schedule, but I really hope so. Because man, look, I was content to take the series, but I'll take a sweep, and I think it speaks to the power of that lineup that I think they've been in 5 or 6 games this year where they were down multiple runs after the 7th and still won. So the pitching staff worries me a little bit, but when you have a lineup with that much firepower, I will be sorely disappointed if they don't at least get to Omaha, and I for sure hope I can be there.
Man, Skeens, Dylan Cruz, and the crew. All right, bud. David Helman, thanks so much. Hopefully the Cowboys will take a pass-catching tight end at 26. Be good, bud.
Appreciate it, y'all. Thanks.
Fox Sports, Cowboys Insider. You see him on TV, among other spots. David Helman joining us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Cowboys pick number 26. Blake, they usually don't move, so I think everybody's expecting them to stay at 26. And we'll see what direction they go. Line of scrimmage, tight end. I agree with Helman. Bijan Robinson will be gone, so maybe it's another running back there. And we'll see what they do. Hopefully they'll load it up for Dak Prescott. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Core Cryotherapy and Wellness. I first heard about cryotherapy when Laquan Treadwell was talking about it in 2015. I thought that sounds awesome. Target inflammation at the core. At the cellular level is where they focus with their therapies. Core Cryotherapy and Wellness, plus they have IV therapies. At Core Cryotherapy and Wellness in the township across from Sombra. Check it out today. Core Cryotherapy and Wellness. And super cool spot in the township across from Sombra. Core Cryotherapy and Wellness. If you missed anything, hit Apple Podcast, search Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. The full Fred Smoot interview is there.